Hey Latchkey kids and drive-in mutants, you're listening to KAB 1340 Antonio Bay Radio. I'm Lady Shasha, mistress of the snark, connoisseur of the gore, and hostess with the mostest. I just watched the 2022 film Fresh. It starts out with a first date that is just so aggravating. I would have just left mid-conversation. He was so gross talking about, quote, modern women, while demanding she pays half the tab. That's not very old-fashioned of you. If you want to go back in time, go all the way back to when you were responsible to pay for every date, the house, your wife's clothes. You can't have it both ways. Bet he doesn't want to do all that. He also complains about how most women don't want to wear dresses. There's all types of women in this world. There are plenty that like to wear dresses. Go find one. How are you going to judge all? Never mind. I just remembered that only ignorant people speak in absolutes. Anyway, shout out to the modern men I know who aren't on that dumb shit. I appreciate you. Another annoying thing about this movie was the black best friend trope. She existed only to be of service to the white protagonist. No matter where she is, no matter what she's doing, she always has time to stop and give advice. Anyway, our main protagonist Noah meets Bucky in the produce aisle at the supermarket and starts a romance with him. I know his name's Sebastian Stan, but I like calling him Bucky. Fairly quickly, she trusts him enough to go for a weekend trip with him. I won't say what happens next, but the title card doesn't pop up until 33 minutes into the movie. Something happens with Noah and her bestie starts to investigate. The remainder of the movie is about Noah dealing with a horrific situation. I'm being deliberately vague. I went into this movie without having seen the trailer. I mostly avoid horror trailers now because they spoil too much of the movie. So for this section of the review, I won't spoil the movie. I will give you a hint as to the type of movie this is. It feels like it wants to be as strange as something like Boxing Helena, Victim, or Tusk, but it doesn't quite make it. In my opinion, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either. The social commentary was a good attempt, but it fell really short. Nice try though, I guess. Now I'm about to get into spoilers, so if you want to avoid that, this movie is on Hulu as of this recording. And now it's spoiler time. You have been warned. I have questions. Could you still walk if someone cut your ass off? That's a thing that happens in this movie. A woman gets her actual ass cut off, but she's up and walking soon after. Also, when the four women got loose and they managed to knock him out, why didn't they tie him up? How are we going to be a so-called feminist movie, but you make the women so stupid? I didn't appreciate that at all. They did get him eventually, but it was so anticlimactic. Black best friend Molly is always conveniently there to save the day. Several times. Like I said, I got the social commentary and underlying message being presented, and it was alright, but seriously not that deep. They tried to tack on a lukewarm message about secret societies, but kind of punked out on fully exploring that. Why include it if you weren't going to go there? My reaction was like, okay, and? Oh, that's it? That's all you're going to do with that? Okay. When I was a kid, I used to hear adults call the pickup scene meat markets. This movie took that idea and made it literal. I imagine the filmmakers patting themselves on the back thinking they really did something. There was more nuance in the 1989 horror movie Society. Get Out also did social commentary horror thriller right. But my favorite horror sci-fi movie with an underlying social commentary is They Live. They Live is a masterclass on how to infuse social commentary into a movie while still being entertaining. Another gripe I have about this movie is that I don't like that the revenge was not done in a more impactful way. I grew up on Miss 45, Death Wish, Savage Streets, and Invasion USA. If you're going to promise me revenge, deliver. Show me some over-the-top revenge served extra cold, not this weak sauce ending you came up with. So unsatisfying. He cut off pieces of your body. Tie that motherfucker to a chair and go to town like Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. This movie left me feeling the same as that movie with the rainbow hair lady who tries to get revenge on men who are predators. I forgot the name of that movie because it was kind of whack. I was so disappointed I didn't even bother to review it. Trivia for you, what movie am I talking about? I just thought of another movie I used to watch on HBO as a kid. I think it was called Extremities. I remember it was about a man who tried to attack this lady, but she sprays some chemicals in his eyes and locks him in her fireplace. I can't remember how it ends. I need to find that and rewatch it as an adult. But I remember it being pretty cool. Anyway, what is your favorite revenge movie? Let me know in the comments. In a nutshell, this movie was just alright. It held my attention well enough. I just thought the ending didn't go hard enough in my opinion. Have you seen Fresh? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. Just watched Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This movie takes place during a hurricane party in a mansion. They play some game called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I would be so bored if I went to a party and they played this game. The first 30 minutes of this movie is quite boring. The dialogue is mostly trite, and the only character I liked was Pete Davidson's David. I was waiting for the killing to start because they sold this as a slasher movie. We don't get a kill until about 35 minutes into the movie. I wouldn't notice this if the movie was more engaging. Lots of great horror movies have a slow burn, but the material has to be engaging and the dialogue was just too boring for me. Sprinkling in internet jargon doesn't make it any better. That said, the movie does get much more engaging after the halfway mark. I laughed at them trying to make this basic-ass movie seem art house by adding people floating in a pool to ambient music. Side note, a manless braids irked me, but I have seen women with braids like that, so they are realistic. I just don't like those type of braids. They looked pretty janky, but I think that was meant to illustrate her character. The conversations sound like we are already supposed to know these characters, but we don't know them, so we don't know exactly what the hell they're talking about. Plus, this movie is shot with so many close-ups. There was a dance scene in the party, and I just saw heads bopping because the camera was too close. Can you imagine the dance scene in Friday the 13th Part 3 if they only showed the guy's head? We would have missed all the herky-jerky motions. Other than that, it is mostly a great-looking movie. Anyway, I wanted to tap out with 37 minutes left to go in the movie. Then I ended up finishing it because I can't review half a movie. I didn't give up who the killer was or why they were killing because these characters started out so annoying. They did eventually grow on me because as they yelled at each other, we learned more about their characters through dialogue. I like that part about the movie. But I'm calling it. This felt like a vanity project for a rich person who got a budget and a location to show off their lack of screenwriting skills. I could almost feel the writer or writers patting themselves on the back. I added internet buzzwords and I showed them doing TikToks. I totally nailed Gen Z culture. I'm not sure they did though. If you're Gen Z watching this video, please let me know what you thought of the dialogue in this movie. I did think the line about the dude being a Libra moon rising was kind of accurate though, because I have witnessed people talk about their birth signs in this way. The director, Halina Reagan, is 46 years old, and this is written by Sarah DeLapp. Google says she is about 32. Literally, it says about 32. And there's a story by credit for Kristen Rupinian, and her Google also says about 40, which is very interesting. Why does it say about for both of those ladies? It's very, very strange to me. So we have two millennials writing dialogue and a Gen X directing dialogue meant to be for Gen Z and cuspers. That said, the actors did do a great job with what they were given. They put their all into the mostly dramatic acting. I actually credit the actors with the lines that actually landed because I think they put their own thing on it and made it stick. This movie is mislabeled a horror comedy because it isn't very scary and it's not very funny at all. There was only maybe one or two moments that were funny in a clever haha way, but nothing laugh out loud funny and nothing really, really scary either. It's more of a drama mystery thriller. If you go in expecting a heavily dialogue-driven movie instead of a horror, you may enjoy this a lot more. Have you seen Bodies, Bodies, Bodies? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. I just watched Hatching. It starts out with a family filming a hello message. The colors are pastel and the lighting is bright, similar to the lighting in Ari Aster's Midsummer. Suddenly a bird comes through the window and flies around the living room. The little girl, Tinya, catches the bird, but her mother kills it. That is this movie's first warning for two things to come: gruesome imagery and an allegory for a mother-daughter relationship that is unhealthy. The mother has a family vlog that she tailors to make her family appear perfect. Her daughter's already picking up on Mom's perfectionism. She notices that her toes aren't pointed in a dance video, and she requests that her mother edit that part out. One night she hears strange sounds in the woods. Something more gruesome happens, but I won't spoil that part. Anyway, Tina finds an egg and takes care of it since its mother has died. Tina is lonely and isolated by her parents from developing friendships. She's a gymnast and feels pressure to perform perfectly. She also feels pressure to keep up parents' secrets. Pressure to keep up appearances, just pressure all around. This movie is hauntingly beautiful. I enjoyed the pastel color palette. It had great visuals. When Tina was in the forest with the low-laying fog, it looked great. It also has great creature effects, some of which looked animatronic, but then they develop into a practical effect assisted actor. The creature hatches from the egg, and she names it Ali. She takes care of it, and it feels what she feels. She's a middle school aged girl, so she feels a lot of things. I really enjoy movies that have monster as a metaphor, or metaphorical horror, like The Babadook, for example. If you like quiet atmospheric horror with a little touch of gore, I definitely recommend Hatching, which I watched on Amazon Prime, but I believe it may now be available on Hulu. Have you seen Hatching? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. Spoiler warning, you have been warned. I like how in this movie the creature has various states. We see its metamorphosis from hatching from the egg until it grows to its final form. I was very surprised about the mom's secret affair not being a secret because the father knew about it and didn't care. And it was also very interesting when the mother took Tina with her to stay the weekend with her side dude. That was very, very interesting. The side dude is a widower with a baby girl who lives in a large, creepy fixer-upper, which also added to the atmosphere of the film. I love when the creature shows up and it does its damage. I didn't know that the young actress playing Tina also played Ali, the creature. She did a phenomenal job. But like I said, I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I recommend it for people who like quiet, atmospheric movies with a little bit of gore, a little bit of creature feature, and also a lot of story. I just watched the 2021 film, The Scary of 61st. This was described as an Eyes Wide Shut style horror movie. That was a lie. This movie can't even hold Eyes Wide Shut's purse. I will say a few nice things before I tear this apart. This was shot on 16mm film, so it has a great retro look. The lighting is mostly great as well. I like the old school camera work, especially the smash zooms. The cinematographer is Hunter Zimny. Great job, Hunter. I could see that you were influenced by 1970s giallo movies and you recreated that filming style quite nicely. I look forward to seeing what you get to do in the future. That is the extent of anything positive I have to say about this movie. I don't know whether the dialogue is bad or the acting or both, but I laughed out loud at multiple scenes. They literally have a character say, "You are in grave danger." This movie is so bad. So terribly, terribly bad. I've never seen so much nothing happen in a movie. They had 25 minutes of content and stretched it to 90 minutes. I have to spoil this to get to the crux of the issue. So from here on out, there will be spoilers. If you still want to see this, at the time of this recording, this was available on AMC Plus and Amazon Prime Video. I have heard that it will soon be available on Shudder as well. Here goes the spoiler section. You have been warned. The main character is supposed to be possessed by the ghost of a girl who was abused and killed by Jeffrey E. I won't say his name because I don't want to get flagged, but he does have a creepy island and a famous flight book. Anyway, one roommate was possessed by one of his victims, but they make her act like she enjoyed being victimized. They had a child that was SA'd, acting sex crazed, and that implication is so fucked up. This is disrespectful to abuse survivors. The other roommate is possessed by Jeffrey E. and tries to attack her girlfriend who is researching Jeffrey E. They even go as far as to have a person playing Ghislaine. You can't see my eyes rolling, but they are. The best scene in this movie is when the girlfriend and the other roommate's boyfriend burst through the door and the door bounces off the wall and hits her. That was a blooper that they left in, probably because this was shot on 16mm and film is expensive. This was written by Dasha Nekrasova and Madeline Quinn. Y'all have issues. You used all the buzzwords that you could find on Reddit, but the story was still paper thin. There was nothing scary or even suspenseful. This was so unintentionally funny, I actually laughed out loud. Dasha also directed this. I think that she was going for a Lars von Trier type of feel like you get in Nymphomaniac, or more so Andrzej Zulawski, who is well known for directing the 1981 film Possession. This movie went for the aesthetic of films like those, but the writing is just not good. At all. Have you seen The Scary of 61st? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. I just watched the 2021 film Last Night in Soho, starring Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy. Thomasin plays Eloise, who is an aspiring fashion designer who gets the opportunity to go to London to study fashion design. Eloise is a bit of a fish out of water, coming from Cornwall to London. She had a bit of culture shock when meeting the other design students in her dorm, as they are more metropolitan than she. She also learns how cold some city people can be. I thought that was illustrated well with their interactions. I can relate to Eloise. I came from a small town in Connecticut and went away to college in Miami. The students were nicer to me in Miami and really looked out for the girl from the small town. They weren't cold, inconsiderate, or cliquey like the girls Ellie has to deal with in this movie. Anyway, this gives Ellie a reason to leave the dormitory and search for a better situation. She finds a listing for an apartment in Soho. Side note, I just realized that there is a Soho in London, a Soho in New York, a Sono in Connecticut, and a Sodo in Orlando. Since this review is spoiler-free, I will just say that Ellie is mysteriously able to travel to 1960s London, which is shown in the trailer. She's able to interact with a singer named Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. I really like Anya Taylor-Joy's face. She reminds me of Zoe Lund, who starred in Miss 45. That said, Thomasin McKenzie really shines in this movie. I thought that I was not familiar with her before this movie, but actually, I just didn't recognize her as the same actress that was recently in M. Night Shyamalan's Old. This movie is a very compelling mystery thriller. When thinking about the plot, the phrase, "all that glitters isn't gold," comes to mind, because Ellie has a very idealized view about what the 60s were like, and she views Sandy's life as glamorous at first, until she gets a closer look. She sees that what is going on behind the scenes isn't glamorous at all. That's when this movie takes a tonal shift into psychological thriller. Or I should say that it adds on to its mystery thriller aspects by also including psychological thriller elements. This movie is also categorized as horror, so I became a bit anxious as I anticipated what that horror might be. This movie does get creepy. But before I get into that, I want to mention someone else who really shines is Michael Ajao, who you might know from Attack the Block. He plays John, a very sweet and kind student who is in Eloise's class. I really loved his character, and his acting made that character work so well. I noticed that when he ordered a drink, it was called the Cronenberg. I'm guessing that that's a shout out to director David Cronenberg. This definitely has a Cronenberg feel to it, especially as the tension ratchets up. I became increasingly worried for Ellie and anyone close to her. This is tense, suspenseful, and entertaining. There are some nice twists and turns. You may think you've solved the mystery based on the clues presented before you, but then what you think you saw is completely recontextualized. I really loved the twist. I totally didn't see it coming. I really thought that I had the story pegged as one way, and it was something completely different. The ending is not only masterfully done, it is brilliantly shot. I will say that there is one scene that would have had one hell of an impactful jump scare if it hadn't been spoiled in the trailer. So if you haven't seen the trailer for this, do yourself a favor and do not watch the trailer. Go in blind, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy this. Did I mention how great this movie looks? You know I love color. Shout out to the original Suspiria, and Poltergeist, and Creepshow, and Return of the Living Dead. Horror doesn't have to be dreary or sepia-toned. I recently read that the director of this, Edgar Wright, is very influenced by Dario Argento's Suspiria. I also saw shades of the movie Repulsion, which was shot in London in the 1960s. Edgar Wright is best known for Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but I really liked the trailer he did for Don't, that was part of Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse double feature. I hope he still gets to make that into a full-length feature. I highly recommend this film if you like David Cronenberg films, David Lynch films, and as a wild card, I'm going to also say Bill Condon, who directed a mystery thriller called Sister Sister. It starred Eric Stoltz and it was released in 1987. If psychological mystery thrillers with a bit of horror thrown in are your thing, definitely check this out. At the time of this recording, Last Night in Soho was available to rent on Amazon Prime Video. Have you seen Last Night in Soho? What did you think? Let me know in the comments. I just watched James Wan's new movie, Malevolent. The opening feels like a TV show. Not like the great shows we have now like Evil or The Exorcist TV show, like some early 2000s horror show. This is about the third movie I've watched in so many weeks that had an opening credit sequence that was very TV show-like. Maybe this is a new trend, I don't know. This starts in the past, and the opening is kind of similar to The Witch Part 1 Subversion, a great action horror sci-fi movie from South Korea I just so happened to catch on Netflix. Check it out if you get the chance. We jump to present day and our main character is Maddie. She might be a medical assistant or a dental tech. She's wearing scrubs that look like that's the type of profession she has. Not that any of this is going to matter in the story. Maddie comes home from work early because she was in pain and her partner abuses her and slams her head into the wall. That turns out to be a catalyst for things to come. Later that night, he becomes the first victim of this entity that reminds me of Old Girl from Lights Out. I feel like James Wan is messing with me. He keeps having characters do things that make me yell at the TV. Why are they going towards the danger? Everyone in this movie is a perfect victim, just walking towards the danger. Also, Maddie lives in a house that just looks haunted from the giddy up. There's some detective characters. I'll call them not Keanu and not Wanda Sykes. Maddie seems to have a psychic bond with the killer, so she and her sister tell the detectives about this. At this point, they found out her adoption backstory, and I'm like, is this like Basket Case? Because the storyline sounds like Basket Case. Just like Insidious is low-key a reimagining of Poltergeist, this is low-key a reimagining of Frank Henenlotter's Basket Case. I actually like the premise because I like Basket Case. The problem is that Wan couldn't decide whether he wanted to make a modern, mainstream, big-budget horror movie or an early 80s exploitation horror flick. I mean, he added some hookers and a jail scene towards the end, and that's a firm nod to exploitation, and there was some gore in this. But you have to wait for the gore. He's still too highbrow about it, giving little glimpses of gore and then showing more and more as the movie progresses. If you want to do exploitation horror, you have to let the camera linger on the practical effects for more than half a second. Also, you need buckets of that good old-fashioned corn syrup blood. CGI blood just won't cut it. I can't say I didn't have fun watching this, because I did. I just think it was unsure of what type of movie it wanted to be. Even the score seemed like an iPod on shuffle. 1 minute is creepy orchestral score, and then the next it's a retro 80s synth sound. I did kind of like the synth sound though. It just seemed like his approach to every aspect of this was, why not both? While I did have fun watching this, it really just made me want to rewatch Basket Case and The Witch Part 1 Subversion. At the time of this recording, Malevolent was available on HBO Max. If you want something fun to watch with friends on a Friday or Saturday night, check out Malevolent. Have you seen Malevolent? Or do you plan on seeing Malevolent? What are your thoughts on it? And also, what are your thoughts on Basket Case and exploitation horror movies in general? Let me know in the comments. This is the spoiler review for James Wan's Malignant. To start off this video, I'd like to bring your attention to the fact that this movie had a $40 million budget. Keep that in mind because we'll circle back around to it. The opening to this movie feels like a TV show. Not like the great TV shows we have today, like Evil or The Exorcist TV show, which I thought was pretty good. Shows from the 2000s or even earlier than that. I expected to see a little monster girl get excited about crispy critters. This is about the third recent movie that I've seen that had TV show-like opening credits. Maybe it's a new trend, I don't know. In my spoiler-free review, I did compare the opening to this movie to The Witch Part 1 Subversion. And I'll tell you why I compared the two. Both movies open with a medical research facility in which a child has done excessive damage and murdering to the staff. Both films then jump to present day, following, in the case of The Witch Part 1 Subversion, a teenager, and in this case, an adult woman. Also in both films, there is an event or a catalyst that starts both things. I won't spoil the event or catalyst that's in The Witch Part 1 Subversion, but the catalyst for this one is when Maddie gets her head slammed into the wall by her abusive husband, who, by the way, becomes the first victim of the entity, which at first looks a lot like the girl from Lights Out. And as I said before in the spoiler-free version of this review, I felt like James Wan was messing with me.
God damn it, are you fucking with me?
He kept on having characters do the opposite of what would be logical to do in their situation. They kept running towards the danger and making me want to scream at the TV. That said, I think this movie was probably really fun in a movie theater with people who actually do scream at the screen. The other thing that stands out in this movie is that house, that super duper haunted house that James Wan loves to use in his movies. Like the wallpaper looked like it was super old. Like everything about this house was like Spook House Central. And that turned out to be such a misdirect because both the marketing of this movie and the beginning of this movie make you think that it is a supernatural movie, which it sort of is and sort of isn't. And I'll explain that in a moment. There are some detective characters that show up that I called not Keanu Reeves and not Wanda Sykes because I felt like that's who they wanted. Like I think they really wanted a Keanu Reeves type and a Wanda Sykes type, and they just went with that. Now how this connects is that Maddie seems to have a psychic connection with the killer. And of course, she and her sister tell the detectives about this. Obviously, they're not going to believe her right away. But it's at this point in the movie that her adoption story is revealed. And I was like, this is Basket Case, because the story sounds just like Basket Case. Her backstory is that she was born to a teenage mother who was sexually assaulted. And when she was born, she had a parasitic twin named Gabriel attached to her back. Gabriel was partially removed from her back, and he wants revenge on the doctors who separated them. This is literally the plot from Basket Case. Basket Case is about a young man who had a parasitic twin named Belial that was removed from his side, and Belial wanted revenge on the doctors who did the separation. Just like Insidious is a reimagining of Poltergeist, this is a reimagining of Basket Case. And if you want to know how Insidious is a reimagining of Poltergeist, the TLDR is that a child gets lost in another region, the other side or the further, and their parent has to go in and get them. Also, there's funny paranormal investigators. I kind of like the premise of Malignant because I like Basket Case, and I like a lot of Frank Henenlotter movies. The problem is that James Wan could not decide whether he wanted to make a modern, big budget, mainstream horror movie or a 1980s low budget exploitation B horror movie. Like I said earlier, this movie started out with a supernatural element that was never explained. At the very beginning, Gabriel is able to control radio frequencies and also electricity. This is never explained. And that part was a little bit frustrating for me because I felt like it could have easily been explained. And listen, James Wan, I get that you love giallo, the black gloves, the murder weapon, the lighting. I love that stuff too. I am so with that. But Asian horror is what you should have drawn from to make this more cohesive or coherent. Or both. Just reveal that a teen mom was impregnated by a demon. I was going to say sea demon, but that doesn't explain the electricity, so maybe go with a lightning demon. Something from some type of either real mythology or made-up mythology. You still could have done something like that, and it would have been easily explained why he has these supernatural abilities. Anyway, I do like that he dipped his toes into exploitation horror. I mean, he added a whole jail scene with hookers that is like a firm nod to exploitation horror. That was actually my favorite sequence in the whole movie. There was some gore in this, but you have to wait for the gore because James is still a little too highbrow about this. He gave little glimpses of gore, and then as the film progresses, you see a little bit more and a little bit more. If you want to do exploitation horror, you have to, from the giddy up, let the audience know what they're getting into and let the camera linger on the gore for more than half a second. I just hate to see practical effects artists put all this work into a great effect and then no one gets to see it unless they abuse the pause button. Also, you need buckets of that good old-fashioned corn syrup blood. CGI blood is just not gonna cut it. At least not yet. The technology's not there yet to make it look good. I kind of wish this whole movie was like the scenes in the jail. I mean, Gabriel ripped one police officer's arm off and hit another one with it. Oh wait, what happened to all those people last week that were so upset about Candyman killing the police officers? The same ones that said nothing about the Invisible Man killing the police officers last year. I wonder what the difference could be. If you're into firemen, hold on to your butts because Michael Myers doesn't like them too tough. Anyway, I still had fun watching this. I just think it was too unsure of what type of movie it wanted to be. And I kind of wish that they committed to doing exploitation all the way through. Even the score seemed like an iPod on shuffle. 1 minute it's a creepy orchestral score, the next it's 80s synth pop. I did kind of like the 80s synth pop part of the score though. When I talked to my sister about this, she said it's like James Wan made a movie just so he can get featured on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. If that's the case, it looks like his dream partially came true. Joe Bob reviewed Malignant, complete with drive-in totals, and he said check it out. That's high praise. I'll put the article in the description box. It's on Patreon, but it's free for everyone to read. But I have to agree, I say check it out also. Even though I didn't really love the first 2/3 of the movie. I love the last third of the movie, and I think that's enough for a recommendation, especially if you know what you're getting into. Seeing as this is a spoiler review, I am assuming you've already seen Malignant. Here's some other titles you might like if you really enjoyed Malignant. Basket Case, of course, but also Society, Castle Freak, and The Dark Half. But like I always say, don't take my word for it. Watch it for yourself. Just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it, and just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. What did you think of Malignant? What do you think of 80s exploitation horror? Let me know what some of your favorites are in the comments. Until next time. Special thank you to my patrons. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Reminder to new and returning Latchkey kids, don't forget to follow me on your preferred social media platform and check the community tab on YouTube for some fun extras. By the way, here are some other videos you might like.